another blog, which is also going to be our Christmas one, because December is unfortunately so busy that I won't be able to do another video. But because this is our Christmas one, I have got something special lined up for you. Today we are going to make macaroons, but not the modern type you might think of. No. This is so much better. This recipe is quite ancient, probably dates to the 7th to the 8th century, but I'll tell you a little bit more about this in a minute. But the recipe I found comes from this cookery book here called The Accomplished Cook by Robert May and dates to 1660. So the recipe in itself is a little bit later than our Tudor period normally, but we do know that these macaroons did exist in Tudor England, and that's why it's okay to use it. But the reason why I've chosen this particular one is because it's gluten-free. Its main ingredients are ground almond, icing sugar, beaten egg white and rose water. That's it. And I recently discovered that I can't tolerate wheat anymore. So I am now actively trying to also find period appropriate biscuits, breads that I can eat, and yeah, which are authentic too. And I know there's quite a number of you like myself out there, so you will go hooray today. But this also is delicious, and I'm not just saying that, I mean it. It is out of this world. There are two different variations we can make from this recipe, because it is so vague that this is possible. The first one is over here, the slightly ragged look, which I made using egg white but not beaten. And then there is the smoother type, where I have taken the same recipe but simply have used the egg white in its beaten form. But it's down to you, really. We don't know which way they used in Tudor times, because both variations would have been known and used. It was in fact the 16th century when people started to realize that by beating egg whites, you can actually use that to make cakes rise. Because remember, no baking powder, no soda was known. So beaten egg white was the new invention in cookery. Right, okay, so let's get started. First of all, we take our egg white. I've already beaten it, but I did use a modern food mixer, but obviously in Tudor times they did not, but here we go. So that goes in. Then sugar, we need sugar, right, icing sugar. Now sugar in Tudor times came in a cone like this, so they had to crush it first. A very, very laborious process, taking lots and lots of time. So we are lucky in the 21st century because we can get it already like this. Right, so that goes in. And you might say, oh, measurements, how much? How many am I using? Right, okay, well, surprise, surprise, the recipe does not give us any indications how much. And therefore, I personally am inclined to give you any particular measurements, because it depends on how many eggs you're using, it depends on how big your eggs are, and so much more. So what I advise you do is that you start using 1 egg white per person you intend to make these little macaroons for. And then you beat it like I did. I've got 2 here. And then you just add sugar to taste. That's very important. And these original recipes are all about your taste, what you feel is right. So you are best learning in how much is fine for you, like. Okay, so I've just used any quantity of sugar that I feel I like. I'm not too much into sugar, so my quantity is a little bit lower than somebody else's. And then I gently bring the sugar in. And then the same with your ground almonds. The most important thing is that the consistency of the pastry is right. So you want to end up with something that's easy to pick up by hand, not too stiff, can still be molded. So the best thing is that you just start and adding a little bit each time, slowly, gently mixing it in, keeping an eye on the consistency. When I'm there, I will definitely show you. Yeah, we are getting there. You can see we are getting there. It might just be a little bit too wet to pick up. You could use this texture now with a spoon, and that's what I did for my ragged ones. I used a spoon, and therefore it didn't have to be quite so stiff. So I'm adding a bit more. Need to put my glasses on so I can see. Now the interesting thing is that the census is that the word macaroon comes from the Italian word ammaccare, which means to crush, probably referring to the crushed almonds. And this reference is obviously to the almond paste which we are creating here, and that historically was the main ingredient to these macaroons. And we know that almonds were introduced to Venice by the Arab invaders at the beginning in the 17th century in Italy. And the egg whites and the sugar were then added to create this biscuit. And we, funny enough, we also know that macaroon recipes did appear in Syria in the 15th century under the name, I think it was something pronounced like lutzi, from the word lutz, which means almond in Arabic. But you know, my pronunciation might be totally wrong, so I do apologize. Right, now I think this is right now, possibly a little bit more, but I have prepared one for you a little bit earlier. This is the consistency you should get to. See, a real lovely paste which you can mold with your hands without getting all sticky. And that's what you do. So we put that to one side, we get the baking tray, and you basically form little balls like so. I squash them a little bit because then they sit more easily. So like that, and make another one. Yeah, it's quite fascinating when you think that according to the legend, the macaroons' humble beginning dates back so early in human history, and they think it might have started in an Italian monastery. Could have been France as well. Some sources say France, some say it was Italy, but they both agree that it was most likely a monastery. But my favorite source is the one that says that it originates in Italy and it came to France in 1533 or thereabout with the pastry chefs of Catherine de' Medici, who then, as we know, married Henry II of France. So definitely a Tudor recipe there. How it then came to England, we don't know, but it could be, you know, everything from France was trendy at some stage and was introduced to England. And perhaps, you know, who knows, it might have been Anne Boleyn. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But I think most food historians agree that the cradle of these lovely, lovely macaroons was most likely Venice, because they had direct links to the Arab world, and because of all the fighting going on between France and Italy at the time, there were also lots of trade routes. Anyway, we know that it was most likely to be known by the Tudors, and that's all that matters. And they are fabulously tasty. Right, I think I've just about filled up my tray here. So they are going to go into the oven now. The original recipe says they were cooked on the fire, probably on a type of tray sitting on the embers. But anyway, we put it in the oven. I am going to use my Aga behind me. Use medium heat, so not too hot. You don't want them to burn instantly. So medium heat, but do watch them. And about half an hour is fine. And then they turn out just like that, with a little hint of a golden dust up on top. And I think that's how they just are perfect. Nice and spongy, and in my opinion they are the nicest biscuits from that period, without any shade of doubt. So why don't you go into the kitchen and create these and give them to your Tudor friends? Anyway, that's it from me for today, I'm afraid. Have a very merry Tudor Christmas, and I'll see you in the new year. Thank you very much for watching from me, Brigitte, at the Tudor and 17th century experience. Stay safe, enjoy Christmas, and I'll see you in January. Bye!